Okay, we are going to review a few basics about bow grip and also the bow angle on when the bow is on the cello. So, bow grip. Every finger on the bow has its own place. My longest finger I like to call Long John Silver because it is the longest and it goes on the silver. My pinky and my third ring finger here, these are both going to be on the frog. Now, you guys are used to being in a class with a lot of violinists, so you see the violinist putting their pinky up. You see that all day when you're in school with them. We have to practice putting our pinky down. The reason we put our pinky down and the violins don't is because we have a much thicker bow, because we have much heavier strings, thicker and heavier strings. So we need the extra weight to get into the string through the bow, and we need our pinky there. Violinists have really thin strings, and they have a much longer, thinner bow, and they need to actually take weight out of the string. So that's why they put the pinky on top of the stick of the bow. So, and first finger is just kind of curved near the winding. And everybody's winding on their bow is a little bit different. So if yours doesn't look just like mine, that's totally fine. Now, the most important finger is the thumb. The thumb is not only going to be bent, but in a very, very specific spot. Now, when I put my thumb on the bow, I put it more on the stick than under the stick. Because if I put it under the stick, it feels like it's going to push through. And I also make sure that I don't put it in this little spot where it really looks like it should go, doesn't it? But instead I put it right in this corner where the frog meets the stick. And I put it more so it's kind of like pushing on the stick instead of under the stick where it feels like it's going to fall through. The most important thing about your thumb is that it is curved or bent. It is so important. It's going to help you play fast. It's going to help you play more advanced bow strokes. And it's also going to make it so that your hand does not get too tired. When your thumb squeezes or is locked on the bow, your whole hand and arm can get very, very tired. So that's a lot of specific information, isn't it? It's something that I practice all the time. Actually, when I'm in orchestra, when I'm in an orchestra rehearsal and the conductor is working with the violins, I put my bow on my knee. Sometimes I even grab hold of my bow with my other hand, and I just make sure that each finger is where I want it to be. This is a nice way to do it because you can actually see your thumb. Because when your bow is on the string, it's hard you can't really see your thumb. The one finger I can't see is my pinky, so I really rely on feeling for that to be right. Do I feel my pinky on the front of the frog? Yes, very good. Then, when you put it on the bow, if you find that sometimes this happens to you, take the stick of your bow with your other hand and adjust. Now, what happens with my wrist also makes a difference on my bow grip. If my wrist is too high, like if I've got a mountain there, my bow grip gets kind of messed up. If my wrist is too low, look what happens to my bow grip. So what I try to think of is from my base knuckles, which are these big knuckles in your hand, you want it to be pretty much a straight line from your base knuckles to your wrist to your elbow. Pretty much a straight line. Here's a mountain, here's a valley, here's a straight line. So once you've got a bow grip that is really precise, right? It takes a lot of precision to get those fingers in the right spots. Once you have your nice, precise bow grip, we're going to talk a little bit about the angle of the bow. So something that, again, you see with the violins, when they're playing the violin this way, or when Miss Eicher is playing the violin this way, she is rolling the stick away from her and rolling the hair toward her. Now that makes good sense for a violin, but for a cello, the whole setup of the cello against my body is different, right? If I picked my cello up and tried to play it like a violin, yes, I would want the stick of the bow rolled away from me and the hair toward me. But because I hold the cello like this, it's the opposite. I want to roll the stick of the bow toward me and the hair away from me. That gets us a nicer sound. And it really helps with not having a mountain. If you find you have a mountain, try rolling the stick of the bow toward you. And one last thing about the bow angle on the cello. Take your bow and balance it on top of your bridge. I'm choosing the middle of my bow to do this, but you can also practice it at the frog and the tip. So once you're right in the middle, I want you to roll to the C string. Feel how your arm can kind of relax. Roll back to the middle, and when you roll to the A string, you feel like your arm really has to reach out. Now, because the bridge is curved, it means that we have to have slightly different angles for our bow to be straight on each string. On the D and the G, it's pretty much straight across, but on the C, it should feel like you're pulling your hand almost toward you. And on the A, it should feel like you're pushing your hand away from you. So that's something I want you to experiment with and see how it feels in your arm and in your bow grip. And also, how does it sound? You should be getting a clearer sound when you use that bow grip and when you pay attention to those different issues with the bow angle.